Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lizzie Hoffman. I'm a member of the marketing team here at AtData, and I wanted to say thank you on behalf of everyone here for joining us for today's webinar. As everyone trickles in, we're going to go through a few housekeeping rules. The title of today's webinar is How to Build Trust with Your Customers, featuring AtData and our friends at Maropost. So a couple of quick housekeeping things before we dive in. Today's session is recorded, so no need to take strenuous notes. Just sit back, relax, enjoy the conversation. If you have questions, feel free to submit them using the questions section of your GoToWebinar portal, or if you're using the web version, wherever you want to submit those questions, we'll be addressing them at the end. So if we don't get to it in the middle, that's why. It's going to be at the end of the presentation. And additionally, because this is recorded, you'll receive the recording after the webinar is complete. So within the next couple of days, you'll receive an email from our teams with the recording, as well as some other follow-up materials. So on that note, I'd love to speak a little bit, just for those of you who may not be as familiar with AtData or Maropost. Maropost is the leader in e-commerce and marketing automation software. And AtData is a leading provider of proprietary data-driven email solutions for digital marketers. So there's a little bit more there. Again, plenty to read through, but you'll get it all in the recording. Now I'd love to introduce the panelists. And Katie, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I'm Katie Intrater. I am VP of Business Development here at AtData. And for those of you that don't know, AtData is actually a rebrand of Tower Data and Fresh Address. But I've been with the company now for 9 years. My responsibility is bringing in new business, as well as managing some of our strategic partnerships like we have with Maropost. John?
Hey, first of all, super excited to be here. Thanks so much for hosting this, you guys. So I'm John Lang, Senior Partner Manager, Account Manager, as it says on the slide there for Maropost. I've been in tech for, well, if you can look at the gray hairs, more than enough years, specifically in email marketing and marketing automation for 10 plus years. So super excited again to be here. Manny.
Hi, everyone. And just in case you're wondering, no, I do not normally sound like Barry White. I apologize. I was at a wedding last week, and we all got a wedding present called COVID. So I apologize. I have my honey here, and I apologize if I cough. I've been in the email marketing business for about 16 years, and my role here at Maropost is as a product consultant. What I do is I help bring insights into the email marketing industry to Maropost so that the customer success managers and the support agents have a better understanding of what's really important to our clients who are email marketers. And I also provide insight to the product so that we deliver to email marketers the best tools for what they need to do to send out the best emails.
Perfect. Thanks for the intros, guys. So starting things off, John, I think you've got something fun to start us off with today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, I like to talk a little bit about are you ready? You waiting for this? Because I've been the elephant in the room. I had to find an elephant, right? And for I think a lot of people who may be doing email marketing, who may not be doing email marketing, who may be not getting the results they're looking for in the ways that they're marketing, and don't understand topics like trust, topics that are important to ultimately getting results from the folks that you're bringing in, that you're attracting into your world and ultimately looking to solve for. We're going to talk a little bit today about trust. We're going to talk a little bit today about data and clean data and trustworthy data. We're going to talk a little bit today about kind of utilizing tools like email marketing in the resources as a resource for you. And so I brought the old elephant in the room, because sometimes folks, wonder if things like email marketing are still relevant, right? And so recently I was at an event called Digital Marketer, and it's one of the top events in the land as it relates to where digital marketing agencies and marketers from all stripes come to learn more about effective ways to market. And Ryan Deiss is well known in the globe as being really one of the thought leaders, one of the top thought leaders in this space. And I went to their conference in 2020, 2021, so it was very much virtual. But in that conference, in his keynote speech, he opened up the speech and said, "Hey, what does everybody think one of the top tools that you can use to get results from your customers?" Now, again, this was just in 2021. This is very relatively recently, and of course, I was expecting TikTok or Pinterest or some of those tools out there, right? And what he said is, you're already ahead of me with the quote, right? The top thing is email marketing. And I agree with him, but I couldn't believe that kind of came from the thought leader in the space for email marketing. And so that elephant in the room, right, is email marketing a relevant and effective tool? I would argue it's one of the most relevant and effective tools that you can do if you do it correctly and if you do it right. Now, just to throw a couple of fun statistics your way, if you will, on the next slide, are things like, well, I'll start with one of the top, if you look at ROI from an email standpoint, one of the top statistics is that for every dollar spent on email marketing offers a $42 return. That's 4,200%, if you will. So, take that in as you think about ways that you're getting out to market and some of the relevant tools that you use to do it. When you see that guy laying on the beach, if you will, and making money, there's a good chance he's using tools like this to do it. And I can tell you candidly, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, sending a newsletter or purchasing a list to do it is not really the effective way to go about it. But just here's a few statistics for you to kind of gobble up and screen share, if you will. I mean, 74% of baby boomers thinking that email is the most personal channel to communicate with brands. I mean, wow, right? Sure, other tools, social media tools, are effective and important, certainly to attracting people into your world so that you can start developing a relationship with them. And that is ultimately what we're going to talk about next. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Manny to kind of take it forward. I'm glad you're healthy, and what a trooper for joining us, by the way. We appreciate it.
Actually, it's me. So before we jump in, so AtData obviously agrees completely with this statement, right? So 20 years ago, our CEO actually made a conscious business decision that email was going to be the center of our entire database, and that has remained a fact. And so basically, if you think about your social media handles, your device IDs, your cookies, those are constantly changing, but the email address is sticky, especially your personal email. And so that is an investment that we've made as a company where we truly think that emails aren't going anywhere. And it is a channel that customers are always going to be wanting to be communicated through. So with that said, how do you build trust with your customers? I think, first and foremost, you have to make sure that the email addresses that are coming in on your site are deliverable and can actually receive your messages, right? So enabling email validation right at sign up is key. And then even through that same API call, you can receive demographic data so that welcome email, that very first email that ends up in their inbox, can create an incredibly strong sort of first impression. And then next, it's really important to understand their channel preference. So making sure that you communicate with your customers in the channel that they prefer, whether it's social or email or even direct mail, and then also making sure that brand tone is consistent across those channels. It's also not only imperative to understand the channel that they prefer, but I think you have to also think about how often they want to hear from you too, right? So this is critical in maintaining a long-term kind of relationship with your clients. Next, so you already received the demographic data, right? And so it's important to also understand their behavior. So marrying the two kind of allows you to put the right products and content in front of them. So as an example, think about a young single guy during the holidays. Maybe he's buying a baby gift for his niece or nephew. But based on their click and search behavior, you can see what he's kind of interested in at that time. But if you look back at his previous sort of behavior and click information as well as his demographics, you kind of understand that that's not something that he's always going to be in market for. And so it's kind of just making sure that you understand the exact relevant content that he's going to want to see moving forward. Next, customer service. So, word of mouth is probably your best source for new organic customers. So if somebody has a really bad, customer experience, the brand reputation is going to be tarnished, and they're not going to recommend you to their friends and their family. And so it is imperative that you keep your customers happy. This is going to improve loyalty and repeat purchases and recommendations in the future. And then, lastly, you've always got to sort of maintain engagement. You want to stay top of mind with your customers. So sending things like newsletters and relevant discounts and check-ins, and even if you have to do a re-engagement campaign, because natural churn does happen, right? So if that does happen, you can take that subset of your database, and AtData can actually run for a month last open flag and help you kind of identify which emails are active elsewhere for you to run a re-engagement or win-back campaign. So I always say that, it's way more cost-effective to maintain your engagement and continue to do re-engagement campaigns than trying to generate net new customers.
Katie, let me ask you a question. You deal with a lot of folks that really are struggling with the results at the end of the day. What would you think is the kind of the top challenge that you guys at AtData see as it relates to creating trust and helping them get the results?
Yeah, it sounds elementary, but truly a lot of our really sophisticated clients still are putting the same content in front of all of their customers. It's just easier. They don't always want to take the time and effort to invest in the segmentation and the personalization. It's a lot of work, but if you get the right data and you have the right platform like you guys have, you can really make a huge impact on your ROI. And so I think, any of us consumers, once we start to get content that is irrelevant, we're going to stop, we're not going to stop keep opening. We're going to start unsubscribing. We're not going to engage anymore. And so I do think that truly taking the time to understand who your customers are behind the email address, what is it that they want? What does their household look like? That is imperative for building sort of a long-term trust and relationship with them for the future.
I love that. So is it fair to say that if we had better segmentation, we talk to our leads one way, our clients another way, we talk to maybe men one way and women another way, that's who we're selling to, that kind of thing, that ultimately you'd see some better results?
Yeah, absolutely. What you put in front of me is going to be completely different than what somebody's going to put in front of you, and that's exactly how it should be. It should be a personalized, tailored experience.
Love it. Thank you.
Over to you, Manny.
All right, so let's go to this next slide, and actually that's a perfect segue. And I just want to give you a little bit of background, some backstory to this diagram that you're seeing here. It's a couple of years ago, actually, I got this inspiration from my wife, who at the time was a special needs preschool teacher. And she brought home this really interesting curriculum. It was called the Circles of Intimacy. It's put out by an educator, David Moore. And it's taught to all preschool teachers so that they can understand how to provide a safe learning environment for young children who are still navigating their way around social structures. And so David Moore comes up with this concept where he has a whole series of concentric circles. And the idea is that as you start from the outside and progress your way inside to the inner circles, it involves a greater and greater degree of intimacy, hence the term circles of intimacy. What David Moore came up with is three very interesting principles. Number one, the rules for what is allowable to be said and done is different at each circle of intimacy. What a stranger is allowed to do and say, who is at the outermost layer of intimacy, is very different than what a friend is allowed to do and say, which is an inner circle, and which is completely different when what a parent who is at the most inner circle is allowed to say and do. So that's really interesting there too. Another thing that he mentioned is that there's a progression, right, from the outside to the inside. right? So everybody starts at the outside with the exception of family members who are more towards the inner, and of course, mother and father who are at the most inner. But there's also rules too about transitioning from one circle of intimacy to the next. Transitioning from a stranger to a friend follows a certain set of acceptable rules. And those rules are different than transitioning from a stranger to somebody with a little bit more intimacy. Make sense? And a third key thing that he mentioned is that it has to follow logical progression. It's not really acceptable to jump from a stranger to an intimate person right away, um, or even quickly blowing through. So after I learned that, I started thinking, can we apply this to the business world? And so I took some time, and this is what you're seeing here. And lo and behold, yes, you can. Because you're seeing here at the outermost circle are the people who are the strangers, the people who are unaware of who you are. That is the lowest level of trust. Then as you move towards the inner circle, you've got people who are now interested in you, trust you a little bit, and they're different than people who engage. Now, an engager is somebody who's maybe taking advantage of what you have to offer. So these are people like taking advantage of a free trial, right? Free trial, you see that a lot in software, you see it a lot in types of services. So these are people who trust you enough to want to try out, kick the tires of what you have to offer, but they don't trust you enough to give you any of their money. And that's why a buyer is different than an engager. A buyer is somebody who wants to continue to engage with the value of what you have to offer. And now they trust you enough to give you their money. A repeat buyer, can you see where the trend progression is going? A repeat buyer trusts you even more to give you more money. They're going to keep coming back. So like as a restaurant, you got your regular patrons, right? They like you enough, they trust you enough, they keep coming back. Now, the two inner circles there that you see there for an advocate and promoter, this is where the relationship transitions from being transactional to something more of a relational. These are the people who now trust you enough that they're willing to associate the reputation of their brand with their personal reputation. So now it starts to get a little bit more intimate. Now, just like with David Moore about rules of what you're allowed to say and do, there are rules of what you're allowed to say in your emails to people who are unaware of you, to people who are interested in you. Very different than what you're allowed to say in your emails to people who are engagers and people who are buyers. Real simple example. And this is one example, as Katie mentioned, as to why some emails are less effective and why some emails are even more effective. Let's say John's visiting my site and I detect him. He's interested in something. Maybe he's just downloaded a white paper or something like that. Next thing you know it, I send John an email and say, hey, tell you what, John, if you sign up for a year's subscription in the next 24 hours, I'll give you 15% off. Okay, that's a call to action that's probably inappropriate to somebody who's at that minimal level of trust. But let's say John engages with my brand. Maybe he's been using my free trial for a while and he likes it. Okay, that's a little bit more appropriate. So did you see that? That's a really good example of where the call to action, you got to make sure that it's appropriate to that particular level of trust to whom you're sending it. And now, just like David Moore mentions that there's transitioning, rules from transitioning from one level of intimacy to the next. Same thing with email marketing. Do not expect your people to transition themselves organically. Some do, most don't. The way to do it is that's where email comes in. Use email to drive the transition from one level of trust to the next. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's take a look at this next slide here. And what you're seeing here is what a lot of products call journeys. It's an automated email sequence. Okay, so what you're seeing here is an automated email sequence that is designed to transition people who are engagers and get them to become buyers. Okay, so the first few several emails are targeted to people who are engagers enjoying, let's say, a free trial. And so the emails are educational. They're reiterating the value proposition of the service or even of the product. So it's just about, hey, how to maximize the value, because after all, they're trying it out. It's a free trial. low commitment. But at some point in time, you want to transition them over to become a buyer. So now you're still going to be sending them emails reiterating the value proposition of the product or the service, but the call to action starts to transition to, hey, wouldn't you like to continue to receive these benefits? Well then, become a buyer. See that? So here's a really good example of how you use email to transition from one level to the next. So I think we've got some examples in the next one here too about some emails that are good for there.
I was going to ask a question real quick, if you don't mind, going back
Sure.
to that customer trust journey slide. So in marketing, we build out these things all the time. This one looks a little complicated. We can obviously make it more complicated too, though. But how would I go about building out something like this? Like, what tools would I need necessarily, or what kind of resources would I need to implement here? If anyone can help out with that.
Sure. Good question. Now, there's a lot of email platforms out there that already provide these types of email automation sequences. Of course, Maropost Marketing Cloud has to be one of many of them. So there are templates that many offer that have pre-configured. So all you do is just fill in the blanks. Like, so there's, like, say, for example, you see those ones there that say send an email. Well, then what you would do is fill in the blanks by providing your own email content. So this is like a pre-made schematic for an automated email program, and then you provide your own content following the guidelines that I just gave. Make sure that the call to action is appropriate for that particular level of trust. I don't know, did I answer that question appropriately?
Yeah, no, you definitely did.
Okay, cool.
I might add to that as well. That was perfect. You may not want to tackle this. You might want to get some help because you're right. There can be kind of a lot to do it, right? To do it right. We may have a lot of small businesses on here that are doing newsletters and not getting results, and maybe you're starting to kind of recognize why that might be, right? Is that you're doing that kind of one size fits all automated message to everybody and not building a strategy and not really having the right content and the right segmentations and the right follow-up strategy and the right communications with your different segments kind of thing. And so picking out the right platform is important because there's a lot to it in terms of getting help with content and the campaigns, but you also want to have the right platform for you in terms of, particularly if you're a more mature customer who maybe is not a small business or just getting started. A more mature customer might work with Maropost who maybe is struggling with things like support, struggling things with deliverability, those types of things, where companies like ours put premium focus on those types of things to make sure that all that happens. And there can be some complexity and some tech to it for sure. So picking the right partners to work with, the right tools are important kind of thing.
I think this is a really smart concept because I can imagine that a lot of our clients, a lot of brands get a lot of pressure from above to put those call to actions in super early. And I think, Manny, your point of sort of gradually guiding your customers into feeling engaged and then wanting to buy versus just throwing those call to actions early on is really, really smart. I think, again, it's kind of like the personalization along the lines, you really have to allow them to understand what your brand has to offer before you start trying to shove your product down their throat. So it's really smart. So moving to the next slide, here are a couple really great email examples that I believe show how different brands have kind of built trust with their customers. So the first one shows the thoughtfulness of uncommon goods when it comes to certain holidays, right? So if you've lost a parent, the ability to not be reminded on a daily basis about Mother's Day or Father's Day is greatly appreciated. I have many people in my life that have off the cuff mentioned this to me, and I thought, wow, I can't believe that more brands don't do this in 2022. And this is a really great example of how they did. And so I think the more brands kind of allow their customers to customize which holidays and kind of content that they want to receive, the better their relationship with them is going to be long term. The second email, so Ancestry.com, they do a really great job of kind of guiding you along the way how to use their service, the most efficiently. So kind of like Manny was talking about in the last slide, giving these kind of step-by-step directions and kind of warming them up and making sure that they're comfortable with the solution before really, jumping in and having them purchase things. I think it's a really great way to build the best experience with their product. Because a lot of times we sign up for things because we're interested, but then we have no idea how to get started. And so this just does a really sort of great way of kind of easing their clients in. And then lastly, User Zoom, they're allowing their customers to choose which channel and how often they want to receive communications from them. And so I think the earlier on that you can do this in the relationship with your customer, it's going to be more beneficial for, having them be a long-term customer, right? So allowing them to choose, yes, I want to hear from you in SMS and email, but not that often, or however they choose. So I think these were a few really great examples. And then, more than ever before, fraud is becoming more and more prevalent, especially in the e-commerce world. We're seeing it with our clients all the time. And so, it's not only important for you to build trust with your customers, but you need to be able to trust them too. And so with our fraud prevention API, we can actually simply take an email in and provide a risk score and email activity data and some geolocation data to sort of help you understand if that customer has a higher propensity to be fraudulent. And this is just really relevant and valuable because it's saving your company time and money. So really it goes full circle, right? As much as they need to be able to trust you, you also in turn need to be able to trust them as well.
Yeah, I love all that because it goes right to things like deliverability again, right? And trust. And if you're purchasing lists, for example, and just sending stuff out, you hurt your reputation, and not just in a personal way, but in a technical way, right?
Yep.
And ultimately it could jeopardize you, it could even jeopardize your email service provider, if you will, in terms of what's being sent. So it's critical that you've got good clean lists and that you're getting people to opt into your communications, maybe even double opt in some cases. And that you're using tools like AtData to, again, deliver validation and those types of things to your lists, and then hitting the send button, you're just getting started, right? In terms of having the right platform and content and to make sure that they get into the inbox kind of thing. So, which is why we have a partnership, right?
Absolutely. It's a great integration. All right, Lizzie, What questions did we get?
Okay, so to start things off, this one just popped in. So the fraud product was just mentioned, right? The question is around, it's typically brought up in conversations with fintech or banking, this fraud product, right? So how can you apply some of these principles or the same fraud solution to e-commerce or retail brands?
Yeah, so fraud, it happens across all different types of industries and all different company sizes. And so, yeah, of course, it's going to happen in fintech, it's going to happen in banking, but it happens in your e-commerce purchases as well. And so what a lot of our sort of fintech clients do is earlier on within the web flow, that email is coming in and they're calling us for that information, and we're flagging pretty early on, hey, we wouldn't recommend, providing them necessarily a short-term loan. They look like it could be a potentially fraudulent individual. And so the same goes, in an e-commerce purchase, right? So somebody signs up, maybe for your newsletter, or they're, filling out some information, and you get that email address, kind of understanding earlier on, all right, that doesn't look like a, valid, legitimate potential customer. Let's find out some additional information, some additional insight about them. It's going to help save you time and money, and, and hopefully, no money lost. But yeah, so it really, it covers the gamut in terms of the verticals that it can help, prevent fraud in.
Yeah, I just want to jump into, I think Katie brings up an excellent point for those of you who are merchants. Let's say you are e-com merchants, because you know that it's all about interest rate, right? It's all about interest rate that your credit card process is charging you. You're shaving off every point, and you know that if you have a high percentage of chargebacks or a high percentage of delinquent payments, your interest rate goes up. And so that's why a service like this is really helpful, to maybe cull out of your customer base people who are actually costing you money in terms of higher interest rates.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, so the next one I have for y'all is, how do Maropost and AtData differentiate themselves from their competitors? So I wonder who wants to hop in on this one first.
You guys want to go first?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Well, Maropost is a marketing platform, and that essentially we have two sides of the house. We have an e-commerce platform, and then we have an email marketing platform that essentially, offers things like obviously email marketing, marketing automation, and journeys, text, social components, those types of things. So we're a platform for which you would build, for example, that campaign, if you will. I'll let Katie take it as to the differentiators in terms of what AtData brings to the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what differentiates us is that within one API call, you can not only clean your emails right as they're submitted, but you can add all different types of insights, right? And I think there are a lot of companies out there that do bits and pieces of what we do with our demographic data, with our activity data, especially with email validation, but there's not really many companies out there that provide all of them sort of in one fell swoop. And so to be able to clean your emails and add all of those insights all within one simple batch project or one simple API call, I think is really unique. And I also think just, the fact that we all, understand marketing. I was an email marketer prior, so I understand when my clients come to me with pain points, exactly what they're trying to accomplish. And so sometimes I'll put together sort of a custom combination of services to help, solve for whatever it is they're trying to work on, whatever their data pain points are. And so I think we're not just going to validate your emails and never talk to you again. We're going to tell you how we recommend to handle them and what we think of, adding spam traps to your suppression list and all of that. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, and we don't ever want to just kind of leave you on your own. So I think, and then obviously our relationship with, our partners, it really allows us to give you the data, and then you can work with these great companies that are going to be able to do all of the amazing, automated analytics and email sends that are going to take your email marketing to the next level.
You could say they're the cleaner, we're the sender.
There you go.
Both required.
Right, there you go. I've got one last one for you guys, and I kind of left this for the end. There are a number of publications, right? Edelman Trust Barometer, and even a few other discussions happening around this idea of trust. So why this topic and why now? Why is trust so important in August 2022? What's happening? What's causing this?
I can talk about that a little bit here. A lot of it is because organized crime has discovered that email is really good at making money. So from the perspective of trust being finding out who your legitimate customers are, right? There's on that side of the equation, but also on the other side too, and that is that consumers are bombarded by emails all the time. And so the emails that you send many times are mingled together with emails sent with nefarious intent. So for you to have to stand out of the crowd as a legitimate email marketing, that's very, very important. So therefore, you need to make sure that whatever you say in your email does establish the appropriate level of trust and that it's on point with your particular brand. Consumers have so much options to choose from. There's every time you turn around, there's somebody else who's probably doing what you're doing, and there's 10 more next month doing that. So how do you stand out from everybody else? Well, tell you what, it's just like any other restaurant or any other store you patronize. I know that I go to the stores that treat me as an individual, that really respect me for who I am, like a restaurant. If a restaurant doesn't just treat me as just, oh, you're just another transaction. Okay, I guarantee you my concept, my feelings about that restaurant is a lot different than somebody who really cares and welcomes me in and gives me a really good experience. Email is very much the same way too. Got to make sure your emails are good. They're conversational. Don't just send an email for the sake of sending an email. Remember, you send it, just think about when you send an email to your friends or to your coworkers, put some thought into it and establish some type of a connection with the person that you're writing to. Remember, you're not out there for them to be a means to your end. You're establishing a level of trust with them through the email. That's how you stand out from the crowd.
I also think, just taking a totally different spin on the question, I think in the world itself, just, you know, bigger picture, there's so much mistrust going on, right? With COVID and with politics. And so your brand has an opportunity to, you know, build its relationship with their customer. And, you know, let's say you're a mattress brand. I don't even know how many exist, but there's a million out there. How can you differentiate yourself and build trust with your customer so that they know exactly what your household looks like and what's important to you? Did you just have a baby? You know, are you, you know, moving from a queen size bed to a king size bed and sending, you know, whatever it may be. I think there's something to be said about, you know, the world is kind of an iffy place currently, as Manny and I are sitting here with COVID, but the brands that we love and continually go back and purchase from, we want them to make us feel warm and fuzzy and safe, and we want them to be empathetic for, you know, our lives and for the products that are important to us. So totally different take on it, but that's kind of what I was thinking when I heard that question.
And the only other thing I would add to that is choosing the right tools, choosing the right people behind the tools to support it could quite simply be the difference between the inbox and the spam box, period.
Yeah,
That is true.
All right. Well, those are all the questions that I had for this afternoon, but I wanted to say thank you to everyone. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to our wonderful panel here. Their contact information is on the screen and will be available in the recording and in our follow-ups. So thank you. Thanks you guys. I appreciate all your time today.
If anybody wants to reach out and talk, our names and email addresses are there about anything. We can give you some guidance, even if you're not sure. Happy to help.
All righty.
awesome.
Thank you all very much for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
All right.
Have a great afternoon. Thank you.